Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. As always, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and you know that I love you listening in. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's reached out to me recently saying that they're loving the podcast. It's brilliant. It puts a smile on my dial, makes me very happy. Travelled around the country quite a lot lately. I worked out that I was in 4 states in 3 weeks, seeing all different types of trees and different bonsai lovers all at different stages. And I've had a look back through the podcast over the last few weeks as well, and it's been a lot about the structure of your trees and what to do with, autumn maintenance around the yard, more practical things. So I thought this episode of the podcast, I'd talk a little bit more about you and your bonsai, just to switch it up a little bit. And I want to talk or ask the question about perfection with our trees. And the idea of perfection for each of us is going to vary drastically, significantly. We're all individuals, we're all unique, and what we see as beautiful it can be very different. Can be the same, can be very different, and this is why I get a little bit nervous about talking about design of your trees and how they look, because that's a you decision. It's not a me decision. It's not anyone else's decision. It's completely up to you. As you know, there's always horticultural constraints with what we do, but the physicality of what they look like, that's up to you, and completely up to you. So the idea of perfection, I want to talk about that because it's sort of like a never-ending or never achievable target. And is that good? Is the idea of perfection the ideal target for all of us when we're working with our trees? Considering that they're not a static medium, that they are ever-changing, is perfection what we should be having in our minds when we're working on the tree? Like I always talk about wanting to make the best bonsai in the world. I still do. I always do. It's always my driver to achieve perfection. But then I suddenly thought to myself, and with talking to so many different people, that idea of perfection is very, very different. But is it a good thing to be targeting perfection? So I want to dig a little bit into that. Also, I want to talk about techniques that you use for different things and whether, your techniques are correct, and some I suppose some key insights onto repeatedly doing, technique that's maybe not up to scratch. So that's this podcast. Hope you enjoy it, and welcome to another week of Bonsai Stuff. So perfection in anything is extremely difficult to achieve. Extremely difficult. You think about someone who's a marathon runner, or a footballer, or a sports star, or that's a painter, or a ballet performer, whatever it is, whatever their area of expertise is. That notion of perfection is extremely difficult, almost to the point that it's impossible to achieve. And I equate it to being like perfection is the light at the end of the tunnel that just keeps moving further and further and further away. And the harder you work, the more you push to get there, the harder it can be to achieve it. And I'm at peace with this. Like it's not something that I get upset about, because there was a point where I thought, yeah, perfection. Yeah, I want the best. I'm going to do the best. I'm going to work the hardest. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to achieve perfection. And then something happens. The tree's a tree. Things grow, things thicken, things push out, get too far, too big, too long. Something dies off. There's a knockover. There's a 100k an hour gust of wind that pushes something off a bench somewhere else, or the branch, or a possum walks across my tree and snaps a branch, or whatever. These external forces that I have zero control over may have an impact on the tree. Oh, and like I said, the tree being what the tree is meaning that it's going to change. And while I expect things to happen, or I can plan for things to happen, or I can, reasonably look for something to happen, it may not. Or if that does, then something else might not happen that I expect, or something might die, or whatever it is. So that perfection for me, while I'm well and truly aiming for it, I also am very realistic in the fact that I can sit back and look at it and go, well, if I don't achieve it, it doesn't mean that I suddenly, throw that tree into the bin, because it's no longer, or perfection might be somewhere further down the line. Like it's a very hard target to get to. Talking with a lot of people that want to do the right thing with their tree and set the right structure in place and start developmental planning for their trees to say, okay, what's that end goal that I'm working towards, that beautiful, magnificent, best bonsai in the world, perfection. How do I get there? It's like, well, that's a sort of $64 million question, really, because there's so many different factors that you can put in play, but you need to do something. You need to start with something. And while it is that light at the end of the tunnel that keeps moving away from you, having a plan. Here comes that P word that I love. Having a plan allows you to set targets that you can achieve along the way. All right. And by achieving those targets short term, it might be, clean out the inner bud, clean out the inner areas of the tree so those inner buds can start to flourish. Let thin it out a little bit, clean the unders of the branch. Okay, that's step one. Is that achievable? That's achievable by every single person in the entire world that does bonsai. That is not something that's so far beyond your realm of scope of works that you can achieve. So yes, that is an achievable one. Go through, do that, tick the box, smile, give yourself a pat on the back and say, you know what, I've achieved an objective with this tree. I've opened it up, I've allowed the bud conveyor to remain a viable part of the future of this tree, which means that somewhere in the future, if this gets too long, I can push it back because I've got those buds growing back in there. Perfect. And then next growing season, spring comes around, you look in there and go, you know what, I did that work back in autumn, so now I can see the results of it in spring. Fantastic. Have you achieved the very end goal, that light at the end of the tunnel? No, you haven't. Are you on the path to doing it? Yes, you are. And I think that for me, it's super important that the path that we're on for our trees is the enjoyable part. Right? Doing things step by step along the way, hitting those minor milestones along the way. That's what makes bonsai enjoyable. That's what really you should be looking at, going, you know what, fantastic. And yeah, somewhere in the future. What's the future? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 1,000 years? Whatever it is. But that light at the end of the tunnel, somewhere in the future, yep, I'm still on track to do that. And the great part about that light being so far in the future is that if the path deviates left and right as things happen, as a bud gets knocked off the branch by a tree coming down to drink water that you've just sprinkled on your tree during the summer period, knocks that bud off that you'd put all this weight onto to be a future branch that was going to be the most important branch on the tree. Suddenly that little bud gets knocked off. Yeah, well, the course sort of veers a little bit to the left, but there's still that light in the future. There's still that light at the end of the tunnel somewhere in the distance, and it's not that far off course. It just, maybe the plan changes and flexes a little bit. All right, so that's no longer, that little bud that's gone, that's no longer number one priority for the tree. All right, this one is now number one. You have to always manage and build into your bonsai psyche and your plan for setbacks. They always happen. Does it mean that you disregard everything that's happened along the way to that point? No, definitely 100%, 110% no. Because it's something about that tree that you're investing into. You started the journey with that bonsai, that tree that's in front of you that you're looking at, going, well, I've had this major setback with things. You started that relationship for a reason, whether it be the bark or be the leaf quality or be whatever, flowers, fruit, whatever it is that you started down that path with that tree. That's still there. That's still 100% right in front of you. Just because something's changed with the plan, there's been some kind of a setback for it, doesn't mean that light's not there at the end of it. That doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting for, that it's not worth putting the effort into. And that's what I mean. Like if you're if you're putting the tree in front of you right here, right now, and go, perfection. Is it perfect, this tree in front of you? No. I'd reckon that 99.99% of trees that get put in front of anybody, there's going to be a flaw somewhere. Is it, or it could be better. That's the thing. Like it could be better than what it is currently. Ramification, it's fantastic, brilliant, fine twiggy growth everywhere. Could it be better with another year's growth? Yep, 100%. The bark quality on the tree, could that be better with another year's growth? Yes. Yeah, it could. Is it brilliant right now? Yeah, it's brilliant. Could it be better? Yes. And this is where I suppose I just want to reiterate to everybody that perfection, while it seems like, it's that never finished trap. it's the great hook to get you in. Oh, come and do bonsai. It's fantastic. You'll love it. It's so relaxing. It's therapeutic. You get to do horticulture. You get your hands dirty. You get back to nature. You have this beautiful tree, and all of a sudden you're on the hook with it, and it's like, oh, you didn't read the fine print in the contract that says you'll never achieve your target because that target keeps moving further and further and further away. And if you look at it like that, then yeah, sure, you will be disappointed. But if you look at the journey that you're on with those small achievable objectives through the planning process, through the scheme that you're building around this bonsai, if you focus on that part of it, then the journey is the best part. The small little things that happen as a back bud occurs. You look at it along a branch and go, wow. Get asked all the time about, will this back bud in through here? I don't know. I can't guarantee it. I would expect when all the conditions are favourable, depending on the variety, the species, and doing all the right stuff, thinning things out, making sure that light and air gets into those inner areas, making sure that you're watering appropriately, making sure that you're fertilising, all the stuff that I bang on about all the time. If you're doing all that, then you know what? You've just improved your chances of, yes, getting a bud to grow in there. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen. No, definitely not. But when it does, sit back, smile, ear to ear, enjoy it. Go, you know what? I did everything that I should have, and this happened because of me intervening and doing my part of the contract with the tree to help it get to that next point. Sometimes when we get back budding, unfortunately, they're not always in the spots that we want, or, you're going through doing your cleaning out going, yeah, great, I've got all this back budding, but it's all useless. It's in the wrong spots. I've already got junctions of branches or whatever. But every now and then, that little shining star comes to the fore where you go, you know what, that is exactly what I want. So, I talk about having these plans and whatever, and I just did recently a weekend intensive where put a lot of thought into the planning process, and it's like, is it something that's for the next growing season that you can do immediately now? Is it something that you can get into that tree, no matter what it is, to do something to achieve something in the future? Is it going out there scraping off the moss and the slime off the top and adjusting the angle of the pot because things are getting too wet at this time of the year? That's a job that you can do, that anybody can do, that will help the tree longer term. Is it something that's going to make you say, oh, okay, I've scratched the moss off. Yes, I'm at finish point. I've achieved perfection. No. And almost every single job that we do or task that we perform on our trees, it's just another little piece of the puzzle to paint the picture for perfection. Even when we get in there and you wire the tree and you're bending branches and you're creating pads and you're getting areas of separation, you're working on the flow of the tree and you've got your negative space in mind and everything's starting to look really, really nice. Is that the end goal? Is that perfection? No, it's not, because you're setting the structure. Then the tree has to grow and develop further. And so I think that while perfection, the idea of perfection for me, and what I'm encouraging everyone that's listening to the podcast, well, the idea of perfection sounds fantastic, and it's definitely a driver for you. Don't make it a deal breaker. Don't make it something that says, I'm not interested anymore or in this tree, or I'm not interested in bonsai in general, I'm walking away, or whatever, because you're never going to achieve it. Like you just won't. That's I think one of the most pleasant things and one of the most enjoyable things for me is that, no tree becomes boring. The work becomes more mundane when you're doing maintenance work on trees as opposed to design work sort of thing, heavy bending and all. I love doing all that stuff. I love putting the first wire on a tree to say, okay, now this is the path that you're going to take. But, so that while the work might become a bit more mundane with that, I'm just doing maintenance, I'm just cleaning things out, I'm just pruning extra buds off or whatever, you're still taking steps closer and closer and closer to that, that notion of perfection, which is beautiful. It's the reason why I clean and sharpen my scissors every single time I work on a tree, because I want them to get to that point where I go, you know what, that's not perfect, but geez, I'm happy with what's happened, and I've achieved a lot along the way. If you don't take photos of your trees, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have any notion of what you want to get to and what you've achieved along the way, it can seem like the never-ending journey. It can seem like something which is so far in the future that you look at it and go, well, I don't know. It started looking very similar to where it is now. It's 5 years down the track, and I just feel like I'm exactly in the same place now as what I was 5 years ago. Take photos, scroll through, have a look, see what the tree, keep some kind of record to go back and reward yourself and the tree, because it's a contract between the two of you, and the tree definitely doesn't want to be ignored. It doesn't want to be pushed to the back corner because it's that's never going to happen for that tree. Once things start getting too long and too far away from the trunk, it's hard work to restart the process. So you're far better, sticking with it, staying focused on what you got to do. But you can only do that if you've got a plan, if you've got some kind of target, some achievable kind of targets. Just having the target to make the best bonsai in the world can be possibly one of the worst things that you can do if you don't have achievable milestones along the way. Because, okay, my only goal is best bonsai in the world. All right, here's a stick in a pot, go. 20 years time, I'll still be looking at it going, still a stick in a pot. Might have developed a lot, might have got nice taper on the trunk, I might have set my primary branches, might be moving into the secondary branching phase. I could have picked pot details, all the rest of it. So I could be achieving all these things along the way. But am I at perfection, somewhere in the future? No, I'm not. So, that's where I think it's, you can have a series of goals for a tree that are, next growing season. It's 1 year. It's sort of 2 to 3 years. It's maybe a 5-year sort of goal. Then there's a 10-year goal, and then there's a, somewhere in the future goal. Don't put a date on it saying, my goal is for this tree. Seriously, it's to be the best damn bonsai in the world that I can possibly make. I love that. I reckon that's a really good end goal. Will I ever achieve it? Possibly not. Possibly not in my lifetime to my extent that I'm completely happy with it. But I just want to talk about that idea of perfection, bust it down into small little bricks that you can achieve along the way. And I guarantee you that you and the tree will certainly have a far better relationship. Right, so I've talked about perfection and targets and goals and all the rest of it. Now, there's a certain level of technique and skill in everything that we do with our bonsai that either helps us achieve these goals, these targets, these ambitions, this vision that you've got, or you can be set back from it. So your application of certain techniques can either allow you to take a step forward, or it may result in a step back or a significant couple of steps back. So there's a method to my madness with this. So practicing poor technique will only result in more poor techniques. It applies to everything in life, no matter what you do. I was talking to someone recently and they said, it'd be great if I got the opportunity to work somewhere where you could just wire a tree over and over and over again for, sort of 12 hours a day and really improve. It's like I said, but you don't improve by repeatedly doing the wrong thing. You improve by learning what the correct technique is and then practicing that correct technique, which can feel really uncomfortable. For instance, if you're running and your technique's poor, but that's the way you've run your entire life, when you're told, no, this is what you have to do. You have to be like this, you have to be like that, you have to, whatever it is, to try and change what you've been doing for such a long period of time can feel very unnatural, very, very unnatural. So if you've been doing bonsai for, I don't know, 5 minutes or 5 years, whatever it is, and you've suddenly watched a video on how someone gets a tree and puts some wire on it somehow and shapes that tree, that then sets the foundation. If you start working in that manner with that method, how you start applying, say, the wire, which is the most common thing where I see that there's technical issues, when you start applying that wire, you do it a certain way. That's okay. It'll do the job. It's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look good. Crossing wires, who cares? Whatever. It does the job, bends the branch. But then all of a sudden you'll find that, okay, every time I wire the tree, I come back later on and I've got dead branches. I'm having issues with this sort of holding its position. I wire it, cut the wire off, and it springs back up straight away. You never know. You don't know what you don't know. I get that. But if you're doing something and it's causing a setback, then I could almost guarantee you that the approach, the technique that you're using is incorrect. You need to, at that point, I suppose, you've got to work out how do you change this from happening, because wiring. There's other things I'll talk about, but wiring is the main one where you see trees stoled all around the world. You watch a professional get on and wire a tree, and you'll go, wow, that's fantastic. And they've got these beautiful old trees that have been wired, for thousands of years, that just over and over they're getting done. And if they were having the same sort of setbacks as what you're possibly having with your trees when you wire, then they wouldn't be at that point. You wire to take a step forward or 2 or 3 steps forward with the structure of the tree. You don't wire to potentially go, well, 1 out of 4 branches is going to die, or there's going to be some kind of a setback with a crack, or it's not going to hold in position, so I'll need to rewire it again next time. That's not how it works. So if you find that you're in that position where you're frustrated with things, just doing it over and over and over is not going to fix the problem. It's definitely not. Stop, review, try and work out exactly what the correct technique is. Reach out to your bonsai network. Reach out to bonsai clubs. Do workshops. Speak to somebody. Go to a bonsai show and look at someone with a beautiful tree and that's got wire on it, and study the tree. Have a look at it. That's honestly one of the best things for me with early days, learning to wire correctly, not just correctly, but properly, like at a professional level, was studying trees that have been wired correctly. You look at them and go, wow, the angle of that wire is so different from what I'm doing. Why have they done it like that? Okay, ask the question. So why is the pitch of your wire like that? Oh, okay, so that's to achieve this objective. Oh, that makes so much sense. So then next thing, when I'm working on a tree and I go, I want to achieve this, it's like, okay, I've seen that before. I know that my pitch of the wire to do the same thing has to be like this to achieve it. Not how I was doing it for every other time for years and years and years beforehand, where I was doing my wire, let's just say, for example, more like a coil, whereas the extended pitch to try and push the branch down worked a lot more efficiently. So you've got to admit, you've got to be humble, you've got to maybe admit that you don't know certain things, and that there's people or other people out there that maybe know better than what you do. Maybe they're not perfect, but they might know better, that you can learn tips and tricks from and start perfecting your technique. So just practicing for the sake of practicing is probably worse than not practicing at all, because you're only going to reinforce bad habits and bad techniques by doing the same thing over and over and over. Like one of the things that I love to show people is significant bending, like major bending on things. I do it a lot, and I make a point of it when I've got a demonstration, or I'm in front of a group, or there's the opportunity inside a workshop to say to everyone, okay, so just stop for a sec, come and look at this. This is a technique that I've learnt, that I've practiced over and over and over, that allows me to bend something into exactly the right position that I want. And more often than not, people just are shocked by it. Some people have seen it before and go, yeah, I've seen that, move on. But other people look at it and go, that's really interesting. All right, let's talk about it. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And then it's, okay, let's slow things down. Let's show you the exact technique. So then when you're in a private environment or you're trying to help someone else, you can always say, hey, I saw this technique of doing the bend like this. And as I said the other couple of weeks ago in another episode, there's different ways of doing the same thing and achieving the same objective, which is brilliant. But you need to make sure that whatever it is, whatever technique it is that you're going to use, that you fully understand it and that you practice it and that you get it as close to 100% correct as you possibly can. There's always flaws as you're striving towards perfection with your techniques as well, not just the design of your bonsai, but with the techniques. But keep getting better, and don't accept mediocrity. You know, if you're putting wire on a tree, for instance, I keep coming back to wire because that's one of the most common places you can visibly see when things haven't been done to a good enough standard. And I talked about it before. When I see it all the time, and it happens to myself, when I start getting tired, that's when I start getting a bit slack. When I see other people are tired, that's when their wire goes on, and they always go, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm just going to put on at least." No, okay. Let me tell you what. Being tired and putting on slack wire isn't going to fix the problem. You're going to break the branch, or it's not going to set appropriately, or something's going to happen. Whatever it is, you're better off going, you know what? I'm going to pull stumps here now. I'm cooked. I'm done. I'll come back to this at some point in the future, and I'll do it properly. Don't do it halfway. Do it either as the best you possibly can, or just leave it for another day when you've got the motivation and the time and you're not under stress. You can just sit back and go, okay, now I'm going to do this properly. How do I do it properly? Don't revert back to poor technique, to poor form, to poor work habits that you've had in the past for a very long time. And they are extremely hard to change. Bad technique, bad practices, from my point of view, and I've been doing this for a lot of years now, and I've seen a lot of different people, and I've been right around Australia, and I can tell you that it's very common where I will sit with someone and I'll say, okay, so see that wiring that you've done there? I want you to do it like this, and I'll show. Okay, and I'll explain it. Yep, no problems. I get that. All right. Something simple. Let's say wire on top of the branch at the junction to push it down. Don't have the wire underneath because it's going to loop. Yep, got it. No worries. Just one little snippet of how to change your techniques with wiring. So when you get to a junction, always make sure that you're on top of it. Yep, no worries. Circle back round. All right, so the very next wire that you put on, you're under the junction. We've got to be on top to push it down. Oh, that's right. And it's that rush. It's a time pressure to try and get things done. And when that happens, it always goes back to the easiest possible route. Water always runs downhill, which is not a bad thing. But when you're striving to improve, when you know that there's flaws in what you do, or when someone tells you there's a better way of doing it, and you can see that better way works better than what you've been currently doing, you've got to slow it down. You've got to come back and just say, write a note for yourself. Whatever, let's say it's, if I want to push down, wire's got to be on top of the junction. Put it on a piece of paper on the workshop wall that sits there. So next time when you come back in there with a tree in 2 weeks' time and you're going, okay, now I'm going to start doing some serious wiring around this pine. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, whatever. Okay, all right. The sign there says wire's got to be on top of the junction. That's right. I've got to physically force myself to change the entire way that you've been handling the wiring on these trees, and just start doing it correctly. Start going, okay, all right. So instead of wiring, 10 branches in 10 minutes, make it one branch in 10 minutes. Take the pressure off, but make sure that one branch that you've done is spot on. There's no compromise. There's no crossing wires. There's no loose loops of the wire. There's no under the junctions when it should be on top, or there's no on top when it should be under. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, make sure that it's perfect. Don't retch it on there so it's cutting through the bark, but make sure that it's on there firm enough that there's no loops on that wire. Make sure that the pitch of your wire, so the angle of the wire as it's put on, is appropriate for what you're trying to achieve. If you want to bend it a lot, reduce the pitch, make the turns a little bit closer so there's more contact points. If you're trying to just gently bring the branch down, extend the pitch out a little bit. Don't always go for a 45-degree target. Go for something that's appropriate to what you're trying to achieve on that branch at any particular point. And I guarantee you, by slowing it down initially until it becomes second nature, then you go, you know what? I don't need that sign on the wall anymore because I'm doing this. Every time I wire this tree, it's going through the back of my head. Okay, wire on top of the junction if I want to push down. Wire on top of the junction if I want to push down. Wire on top of the junction if I want to push down. And when it happens over and over and over, then it just becomes second nature. It's like go back to when you're a kid and you learn to ride a bike. At first, it seems impossible. Absolutely, it's like any new task. It always seems so damn difficult to achieve it. It's like, how do people do that and make it look so easy? Like, how does someone jump on something with two wheels with no stability and suddenly they're riding down the road? You're falling off, you're hurting yourself. You've got training wheels for starters. Those training wheels are like taking 10 minutes to do one branch instead of 10 minutes to do the entire tree. It's that slowing down, getting the technique right. Suddenly it all comes together and you go, oh, you know what? I don't need the training wheels anymore. I can ride by myself. I'm off on my bike and I've got all this new freedom, and it just happens. From then on, for the rest of your life, you jump onto that bike and you're off. You can ride a bike, well, hopefully anyway, without hurting yourself. But then something like wiring or the techniques that you use, that becomes second nature. And break it down to something little like cleaning your tools before you work on every single tree, making sure the tools are sharp. That's easy. That's achievable. If you're not doing it, if they're, your scissors are all blunt, then the cuts are going to be smushed together. Tree's going to have to work harder to repair itself. For what? For not stopping for a minute or two before you work on the tree to clean your tools and sharpen them? Come on, that's the poorest excuse I've ever heard. So doing something like that, if it takes a post-it note on the wall of the shed or wherever you work on your trees, make sure your tools are sharp and clean. Easy. That's achievable. We can all do that. When you're pruning something, make sure the cut's perpendicular to nice and square to the branch. Don't do it on an angle. Make sure the buds have got at least 2 or 3 millimeters of foliage of branch past the bud when you make the cut. Make sure that it's exactly the same all over the whole tree, not 2 centimeters at one point and half a millimeter on another. Make sure that you're very consistent with the approach that you're using to maintain your trees, and do it to the best of your ability. There's if you've got that experience of dieback, if you've got breakage, if you've got the approach where you're doing something or using a technique to the tree, but it's useless, it's not achieving the objective, there's got to be a better way of doing it. All right. If you've seen videos, if you've looked at YouTube, if you've looked at Instagram or anything and you've seen, someone's done whatever, and you try and replicate that and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that whoever's done it has used magic to do it. It's just that you've not applied the technique correctly, which means that there's an opportunity there for you to take a big step forward. And just, like I said, repeatedly doing the wrong thing is just going to reinforce the wrong thing. So just when you've got those sort of issues, slow down. With the achievement of perfection with your bonsai comes from the skill level that you apply to your tree. If your skill level is average, then there's a pretty good chance that your bonsai will always stay as average. If your skill level improves as your bonsai quality starts to improve, then that's replicated one for one. It has to. You've got to have good technique and serious application of those techniques to achieve a lot of things we do with our bonsai. So talking about perfection in bonsai, the upside is, and I'm not trying to make it that it's something that I just wave off, because the notion of targeting perfection means great bonsai, which I love. And we all should have, as far as I'm concerned, we should all have in our own minds a target of perfection. Will we achieve it in our lifetimes? Hope so. I certainly hope so. And yes, on some trees we'll achieve it where we sit back and go, you know what, that is perfect. Or you might look at other trees in a show and go, that is perfect. But I guarantee you the person who's got that tree will say, nah, not yet. It'd be better with another year or another couple of years, or if this happened, or if that happened, or if that changed. Someone else looks at those trees and go, yeah, I can see what you mean by perfect, but this part here, I don't like this part. I would change that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. So the downside to targeting perfection is that it's unachievable, which, like I said, if you can break it into really small bite-sized pieces, then, and you're constantly pushing yourself and your bonsai to a higher level when you've got perfection at the end of the tunnel. That's a massive upside. You're constantly pushing yourself. Can my skills get better? Can my tree get better? Can I do something more to take this tree from where it is now to greater heights? Which, yes, fantastic. The downside to that is you might push it too hard. So having a plan, I don't know how many years I've been talking about having a plan for, but it's really, really important, because that pushing it too hard can really set things back a long way, like a seriously long way with the tree and with your approach to that tree. So, having some really short-term objectives as well as those medium and longer-term ones, that's great. That's what will keep you out there watering and fertilizing and smiling whenever you see that tree, because you are hitting your targets. The tree's hitting its targets. You've got the relationship. We can go and give it a cuddle and say, hey, how good are we? Look at what we've done together. This is fantastic. I love you so much. Thanks very much. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Thanks very much for listening. I do appreciate it. I love the company. I love the contact that we have with each other, the relationship that I have from my side of the fence to looking over at your bonsai and being involved with them. It's brilliant. It's really, really nice. So thank you very much for everybody. Thank you, as always, to the subscribers to the podcast. If you do feel like subscribing, please do. It's easy to do in the show notes for as little as $3 a month. It goes a hell of a long way to the continuity of this weekly podcast that I'm pumping out to you. Thanks very much. Enjoy this time of the year. As I always say, it is no matter where you are around the world, whether you're in a spring period or you're in an autumn period or fall or whatever it is you call it, where you come from, we are very lucky to have our little trees out there on the bench that we can spend time with. Give them a cuddle. Spend a lot of up close and personal time with them, either side of the continents. Whether you're in the north or in the south, there's going to be issues that need to be taken care of and be managed. So do spend that valuable time with them. Thanks as always for listening in, and you will hear me again next week on the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Thanks for listening in, and as always, until next time, happy bonsai.